Welcome to Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty Gensius, a counseling faculty at Kent State University and host for Circular Firing Squad. We've got 3 members, 6 questions, and 3 answers for each question. Each squad member generates a question that we all have to answer, some academic and some just for fun. And the just for fun ones are sometimes more fun. The academic ones can be really downers. Let's see who's with us on this episode.
Hi, I'm Steph Martyr. I am a doctoral candidate at Kent State University and practicing clinical counselor.
Hi, everybody. Elliott Ingersoll, professor of counseling at Cleveland State University, the one in Ohio, not the one in Tennessee, and host of Apply Topically, and glad to be here.
Okay, Stephanie, you have the first question.
Okay. My question is, why isn't starting your own private practice an elective course offered in most counselor education classes or programs?
Great question. We've done some variations on it under a seminar. We have an open seminar number that CNS 632. We can put any kind of topic in there. I think this is super important. Man, there's just so much that goes into it. And the way we used to do it was we had people with different types of practices do a 4-person panel, and they would talk about what were the main challenges, what were the things they had to do. And it went over very well. The person who taught it retired, and no one else has picked it up, but it's still out there in the catalog, and I suspect maybe we will do it again sometime. I won't get into why K-CREP kind of almost gridlocks the whole curriculum, so you can't do anything but maybe sneeze and blow your nose in it. But that would be poor taste, because everyone knows how I feel about K-CREP, and that would be repeating myself, and I won't do that now.
Well, Elliott, you and I disagree on that. K-CREP says this is all the topical stuff you have to cover. It doesn't say this is the only topical stuff that you have to cover or that you can cover. So as long as you got everything else in line, then, there are other things in terms of structure that K-CREP probably you and I have similar or different opinions about with it. But on this one, here's my issue with it. I think it's premature. And maybe I'm just way too old school. I was at the end of a class this semester, and one guy kind of hung around. And he was standing in the doorway, and I was sitting at the podium at the front or getting my stuff together. And he kind of blocked me from getting out the door, which is not, I don't think he was doing it consciously, but he's like, so when I finish this degree, I'm going to open my private practice. And I kind of said, maybe you should pass my course first. Because I think it's really premature. We do not give students enough in our program to and experience is what I'm talking about, clinical experience. We don't give them enough in our programs to say, as soon as you finish the clinical experience with this, just go ahead and hang out a shingle. I think there's a lot, and Stephanie can speak to this. I don't know what her answer is going to be, but I think there's a lot that happens from working and developing your skill set and your area of knowledge and expertise in counseling by working in agencies. It's part of that where the typical progression is you work in an agency, you start to see a subpopulation of clients, you get familiar with those clients. You can't really poach them from the agency, but you might wind up doing some part-time hours in a private setting or a private group. And that's when starting your own private practice becomes relevant. My fear is that making that as a regular part of the curriculum means that students think that that is a natural and expected transition for them. And we're talking about 19, 20, 21 year olds who, you know, again, I'm going to sound like a grumpy old man, haven't had enough life experience to be able to figure out a lot of the things that they're going to be doing in their own counseling practice. I don't necessarily mean private practice, but their own counseling practice. So there is some street cred that goes into the experience before they can kind of walk out of out of a master's program and walk right into and create their own private practice. I've known a few that have done it. They are independently wealthy, and they don't have to worry about steady streams of income. Also, ACA has a whole kind of piece of that, like a interest focus on private practice. They have columns in their Counseling Today journal on private practice and how to improve your private practice. So that material's out there. I just don't think it should necessarily be a course in a master's program in counseling. Steph.
Yeah. So now that I've heard your answers, and I appreciate all of that, because I kind of am agreeing with both of you to some degree. I do agree with Marty. He was correct in the idea that most counselors graduating, if they went from a bachelor's directly to the master's, um, need to cook more. And we can get more to about that later also. Um, Also, as an elective, I happen to be one of those people coming in to the master's program in my 30s. And I had done agency work for 2.5 years, although not a counselor. It was CPST. So basically, I couldn't technically diagnose, and I didn't. I could do some interventions and things, but it wasn't. It's more skill building, but it was so similar. And basically, they used us as counselors, if I'm being honest, because we were cheaper, And then they would send like the counselor in to diagnose, and then we carried out the treatment plans. Um, so I think though for those students, it could be helpful, or to at least maybe have a workshop if it's not going to even be an entire course, because maybe an entire course is too much. But to even lay out for people, even if they are, um, if they, need to brown in the oven a little more, that give them some sense of what to expect, to make sure that you're crossing all the T's, dotting the I's, making sure ethically you're, following uh, all the guidelines, and making sure you're doing everything, thinking about all of their stuff, your EHR, getting paneled, just say, here's the checklist, here are the dots. It's not just know, you're going to at least have to know about all of this, to give them some idea. And then when they are ready, they can maybe seek out more of those materials. But at the same time, I think having some guidance, having it outlined, um, along with how much it might cost, some ideas in there, and whether they want to have multiple, just all of those other kind of details. But I can see the point of not trying to encourage brand new counselors going straight into private practice, also.
I liked both your answers, and I'm not sure about Kent. We have a good split between traditional and non-traditional students, and we have a person who's been in a STEM field, then the person was an RN, and now they're doing counseling, and they were fine in the other fields. But I think of people like that. But I also think younger people, I want them to know, well, what are you up against? What are all the costs, the things you got to lay out for? Just like when people say, I'm going to work PRN, I'm like, well, you're going to pay all your FICA. You gotta figure that in. But yeah, I think I like the range of responses, and it's got me thinking some more about how I might delineate who's a better candidate for that. But I think everyone should have access to the info.
Yeah, I don't necessarily object to a workshop. If I put it in as an elective course, then it becomes equivalent with family therapy, It becomes equivalent with advanced multicultural.
Mhm.
It becomes equivalent with couples therapy, adolescent counseling, and so yeah, fine. Hell, charge them for the workshop.
Mhm.
But and have people.
Okay.
And I think probably in our intro to clinical mental health, we have somebody come in that talks about private practice, and I'm sure they have lots of questions. Students have lots of questions on it, but I would say keep it out of the curriculum, directly out of the curriculum. So all's good.
Thank you.
Elliot, you've got the next question.
Okay, there's some similarities thematically. What do you think about the viability of a 4+1 program, bearing in mind some wiggle room? It might be 4+1+5, but the idea being the spirit of a 4+1 program for counseling students. This would shorten their undergrad by about 12 to 18 hours. They could double dip and apply to both the master's and the bachelor's degree. Um, yeah, and I'll give you my answer, but that's the general question. So yeah, 4+1 is you go through 5 or 5.5 years and you get your bachelor's and your master's degree.
So now we're talking about 18-year-olds becoming counselors. Um, yeah, I read this question. I knew I couldn't avoid answering it, but I also knew that I was going to be the grumpy old man on this one. So, when I have done site visits for KCREP for 27 years, and KCREP used to not have any doorway for something like that, and they have now some statements and doorways for bringing in undergraduate credit as part of a program. I've always objected to it, and when they didn't have those doorways, I felt I was more comfortable with the standard, and we'd see some programs, primarily programs that were private, high cost programs that were doing these courses in undergraduate degrees that they were trying to move into and give credit for as part of their master's program. And there are some guidelines around that. Like, in order to be in a counseling program, you have to have completed an undergraduate degree. Or in order to be in a master's program, you have to complete 48 credit hours at that time in order to get your master's. So when I was faced with this dilemma and I would present it to folks at the institution, I'd say, I don't care which one you want me to write you up on. Are you admitting people into the program that haven't completed an undergraduate degree, or are you graduating master's students with less than 48 hours? You tell me which one, because this doesn't, it meets this your need, but it doesn't meet the spirit of the program, spirit of the standard. So yeah, I think our students, and someday they're going to burn me in effigy probably outside Kent State, but I think our students are really naive, and I think the smart ones know that and acknowledge that. To be honest with you, it's what you don't. If you don't, what you don't know, then you're probably smarter than assuming you don't need to know what you don't know. And so my concern is, and this will get into this will get into my question in the next round. My first question. I just think I think it is a quick way for people to move through an academic program that is a need of the institution. It's not a need of the student necessarily. So that's my piece. Steph?
Okay. Well, I don't know. I'll be the grumpy middle-aged woman. Um, what I wrote was at first. Well, first of all, Elliot, I just want to say the way you were describing it, all I was thinking about was Clue and like 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2. All right. If you know, you know. But what I wrote out to answer this question in preparation, I shall read it to you. No idea. Sounds like maybe an okay option for those who know what they want to do. However, as we've discussed before, most students at that age are not ready to be counselors, so shortening the time it takes to get the license from age 17 or 18 might produce a larger number of undercooked counselors. No shade. That's that one.
Those are good answers. Okay, so let me describe what I'm talking about. My idea. This
Oh,
is what I
yeah,
love to do. I love
I was not unclear on what you were talking about. My answer still is no.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm not talking about 17-year-old counselors. I'm
No,
talking
no.
about,
But if they start at 17, then if they're 21, 22, if it's a 5 year, right?
well, they finish the bachelor's, it's still going to be 22. And then they just have a year or a year and a half to finish the master's. Here's what I'm talking about. Uh, and again,
Yeah, still
for the
understand.
listeners who don't know me, I love creating programs. That's actually one thing I'm good at. I don't say I'm good at very much. I'm good at that. We've tried everything at CSU. We've done IVDL. We have done a cohort model. We've done an East Center, a West Center, an LCC, University Partnership Center. We've taken the program on the road. We've taken it 2 places. We try everything. We're very neophilic. So this would be, you would start taking 500 level intro courses in your senior year. And, maybe you would take 4 core courses. Maybe it would be career counseling, ethics, multicultural counseling, and appraisal. You do those, and you are allowed to double dip for those courses toward your undergrad and toward the master's. And then you start the master's 16 credits in. It's just a way to save money and compress the time. But you do have to screen people. Yeah, you're looking for
Yeah.
your better students. You're looking for more mature students. But here's my thing:
Mhm.
the typical a liberal arts education, I respect it, but I'm like, I don't think everyone needs to go through astronomy and English literature and geography if they want to become a talk therapist. What if they took like 4 of those crazy, I don't know what they call them, core courses or even undergraduate electives, and you just took 4 counseling courses? I think that would be a good use of people's money and time. Now, the question, I agree, how would you screen for maturity? And I do not have an answer on that yet, but I believe it's possible to try. And we had well, let's suffice to say there was dialogue with funders about ideas, and this was out of 4 ideas, this was the only one that they were really excited about. And I think that maybe they are thinking about it simplistically: save time, save money. That sounds good. But I really think it could be done well, or it could be done poorly. My hope is I would love to do it well. And we'll see if I'll get that opportunity. But for the first time in 31 years at Cleveland State, we are having regular meetings between all of the disciplines that produce talk therapists: psychology, counseling psychology, clinical
Mm.
counseling, social work. First time ever, because everyone's under the gun. Isn't it funny, Marty? This is tying into your next question too. There's a real theme to these questions tonight. I'm loving it, and I appreciate your answers. And those are definitely that's blowback I've already gotten from people, and so I could be wrong. I often am. Talk to my wife, but
Oh,
anyway, I'm just saying, man. I love doing stuff like this, and if there's a better way to do it that excites people and makes them want to come to Cleveland State, I'm like, let's try that. Let's see what happens.
I would bet most of the people who are excited about it have very little to know what goes into being a counselor. I would say
100%.
they are administrators, they are budget people, they are enrollment people, but they are not trained counselors. So
And because, Marty, you're right, and they don't know what we do, and we have their attention for the first time ever. And it is a wee bit intoxicating, I have to tell you that.
you're
we're just drunk with power.
you're all gonna hate my question. You're more likely you're gonna hate my answer. Despite programs being eliminated at universities based on enrollment, what programs, majors, or courses should universities not eliminate?
I it could be difficult, but obviously I was going to say clinical counseling, school counseling, counselor education, and supervision. Don't eliminate those. Um, but Now I'm curious about what these answers are going to be. Um, I don't know. It's hard for me to talk to what kind of education should be eliminated. It's just not something that I go with, and I understand streamlining in a lot of ways, but I appreciated getting to take intro to puppetry for my bachelor's. You know, I had a great experience and actually learned a lot. And, um, you know, obviously I did not major in puppetry and I am not a puppeteer, um, or even working in the theater. However, it was a valuable experience. So it's difficult for me because I think that might be one of the first kind of courses to go at a university. Um, but it was fabulous and something I look back on, and I got a lot out of. And I'd hate to rob students of those opportunities that they didn't even know that they could have.
Elliott.
Yeah, this is a great question. And I, my first response was probably a wee bit traditional. I would start from the most recently configured programs and evaluate them first. Because kind of what you were saying, I might be doing, Marty, with the 4+1 idea. Some people are capitalizing on a fad, which is transitory and not going to last. And so maybe you don't want a whole degree program around that. Do you remember the trivium and the quadrivium? The
No.
quadrivium is math, geometry, music, and astronomy. The trivium was rhetoric, something mathematical, and one other thing. Those were kind of the classical pillars of the liberal education in
Hmm.
university. And I do believe everyone should be exposed to mathematical thinking to see how their brain responds. I I don't have a lot of respect for like statistical studies, but I think math is one of the most beautiful things I've ever encountered. And the aesthetics of it touches me. Now, I never would have known that if I had not gone to university. And I'm grateful of that. I know that there's multiple types of geometry. There's Euclidean, Lobachevskian, Riemannian, and they do different things. And so I think there's like all of the well, here's what I'm saying. I guess the STEM pieces I would leave alone. Um, I'm getting real disturbed. So many universities are eliminating the physics major because, yes, my mind doesn't work that way, but I have a son. His mind works that way brilliantly. And, I know you could still get a physics course, but do you really want to eliminate something that, as far as Newton was concerned, is so essential to the four-dimensional universe we seem to exist in? So I think there is a point to reviewing the classical liberal arts education, but there was a reason all of those pillars were in there. So be exposed to literature, be exposed to mathematics, be exposed to music. Music and mathematics are so intimately close. Um, I don't think we can talk about humanity without addressing philosophy or theology. There has to be some grounding in what have people thought and how were their minds maybe different than our minds, and maybe that helped lead them to what they thought. But what basis did it lay for the future that we ended up living in? I think all of that's really important. History, I think, is vitally important. No one studies history. What was the saying? History is a brilliant teacher with no pupils. So yeah, those are the things. But I think a lot of the things that have been, well, I don't know. I just see some of the maybe we can get rid of general studies. We could start there. I think that's an easy one. A lot of people could agree on. But I think you have to look at a balance between what is the place of this course of study in the history of human knowledge, and what are people enrolling for and not enrolling for. Because I don't know, where do you draw the line? What if there's only 4 people who want to be study oncology? Would you get rid of oncology in medicine? No, of course not. So I don't want to think it's just a popularity contest, but I think enrollment's got to play a role. Trends, here's my thought. It's Jungian. Trends in enrollment reflect trends in the evolution of consciousness. And we have to figure, in consciousness, let's use consciousness to study consciousness. Never works out very well. But I think we have to at least pretend play with thinking on those lines, and then asking what does humanity need to know right now that we could provide at university? What seems irrelevant to humanity right now? I mean, regarding the challenges we face. Sorry, that was a very muddled speech, but I had a short answer to this, and then I got Jimmy, my brain got other ideas.
Yeah, well, you made a wonderful case for liberal education, Elliott, which pretty much wipes out your previous answer to question.
Thank
And the
you. I was
ironic
just
thing here is the two words I wrote down to not eliminate was liberal education. So, Stephanie, you can still have your puppetry class. I think, boy, in this, I am going to get, if students listen to this, I'm painting a target on my back. I don't think our students, because of generationally how they've grown up, how they have been engaged, what their curiosities were encouraged. Um, and I think it goes back to grammar school, grade school, and high school, where there was such a focus on getting a correct answer. So we have to make sure people get only information that's important for the test. And the test then defines what the body of knowledge is that we should know. I think most students, oh, don't know much outside of their own skin. And that's where I think liberal education helps you in terms of understanding philosophy, like you said, Elliot, ways of thinking. You know, I did really well in math. Not everybody's going to do well in math. It doesn't mean I was going to be a mathematician, but I was fascinated, and I did well in physics too after I dropped it 3 times. But the way it was able to encourage a broader way of thinking for me and to think outside of the realm of what is only tangible has helped me greatly when sitting with clients, because I get to think I can process on a deeper level, on a more meaningful level than just what I learned in my cognitive behavioral therapy book. So for me, what shouldn't be eliminated is liberal education. And this is true for universities. Universities are identifying low enrollment courses and well, not necessarily low enrollment courses, but low graduate programs. So
Yeah.
programs that aren't graduating enough pupils or students. And with that, sometimes the coursework is tied to that, and sometimes the coursework isn't. So there are courses within that major that a lot of people sign up for, but nobody signs up to be part of that major. And I think probably what we would think of the humanities is probably the areas that are the biggest targets for this. People don't sign up to be humanities majors as much, and as a result, they if you eliminate that, you wind up as a major, you potentially eliminate faculty, and you potentially eliminate a body of knowledge that doesn't get passed on to our students or is encouraged by the university to be passed on. So yeah, that's my answer to that is kind of liberal education in general.
And
and
Marty, if I can tag on to supplement what you just said, like I'm a musician. I've got thousands of songs in my brain, mind, all of that. Poetry, wow. I just I don't hear the rhythms. I don't, I never got in there. And I had to take a class. I had to take an English elective, and the one I wanted was full. And this was walking through modern poetry. Dr.
Hmm.
Henke at Youngstown State. And I was like, okay. And this guy was a hoot. He inspired me because he wasn't very highfalutin, so to speak, but he had a good grasp of the material. And we were talking about, I think it was Robert Browning, My Last Duchess. That's my last Duchess on the wall, looking as though she were alive. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day. And he says, Mr. Ingersoll, what do you think that means? And I said, well, maybe he hung his wife on the wall, but maybe it's a picture. And then he said, yeah. And he said, "Do you know what a fra refers to?" And I had studied a lot of theology. I said, "Well, he's probably a brother in a religious order, like a monk." And he's like, "Oh, Mr. Ingersoll, not so thick as you look." But it was like, and then he walked me through the rest of the poem, which I had no clue on, right? And I came out of it with such an appreciation of what that fellow Browning had done with words, and Dr. Hankey's ability to teach it and help me come. I was very rigid as a young man. I thought I knew everything. Ah, know nothing. And I came to appreciate a good deal of poetry thanks to that. So yeah, Marty, I'm with you. You never know where inspiration will strike.
And I was just going to quickly add on, Marty, the thing that I forgot to add on was at least a point that you had made, which is that time and time again, all of this stuff that might be considered extraneous knowledge to a counselor has helped me in session join or, um, you know, understand clients more or somehow strengthen the therapeutic relationship.
Okay, cool. Stephanie, you actually have the next question.
Okay, time for something lighter, a little shorter and sweeter. Um, I need a movie or show suggestion, please.
Okay. I'm just going to come at you with what, my partner and I have been watching. The Diplomat on Netflix with Carrie Russell is delightful. Um, Dark Winds on, I think it's AMC. I don't know if that's right. That might be the car, but used to be American Movie Classics. Dark Winds, that was very good. And film wise, I've rewatched this. I think is the best zombie film I've ever seen. It's called Blood Quantum, a very Canadian film. Yes, dealing with Indigenous peoples, but a most creative zombie film. And then if you want some classics, Andre Tarkovsky, Stalker is one of my favorites, and his version of the original Solaris is just amazing. It will carry you to other worlds. Um, yeah, so those are just the things that come up the top of my mind. But there's a lot of good stuff out there.
I'm going to talk a little bit about my latest obsession. And unfortunately, it's one of these series that comes out once a week. So I have to wait 6 days till I get a little bit more of the addiction. It's an Apple TV Plus or an Apple TV show called Pluribus. And it is developed and produced and directed. The creator is Vince Gilligan, who did Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And I don't, I had this discussion with my son this afternoon. I said, "How much do you want to know about the show that isn't going to leave you with surprises?" So I'll start, and then maybe I'll let Steph ask me questions if she wants to know more. A
Ooh, a show
globe,
within a show. Bum
it's
bum bum
yeah.
bum.
This also Pluribus also has a podcast, which makes it kind of nice because once you watch the show, you can listen to the actors and the production people talk about aspects of the show. I think some people would say, well, is it science fiction? Is it a tech based show? Well, no, not really. There is a global incident that occurs that is actually triggered by mankind getting involved in some information that then leads to a global incident. And there are essentially 11 people who aren't affected by this incident.
Hmm.
And it is so well written. For folks who know Severance, another Apple TV show, for me, Severance was too slow. This really kind of moves along in terms of the pace. So you have a protagonist who is surrounded by people that are affected by this incident that just want to make her happy. And the the series, the storyline of her trying to connect with other people who weren't affected, and the different opinions they have of having millions and millions of people just wanting to make them happy, is in differentiation between that, having family members who are affected the same way and they don't want to negate their having their family members around. It's just really compelling storytelling, and with some deep philosophical questions that come up, but there are enough twists and turns and what's going to happen next. And the only other piece I'll add to that is, because all of these people are affected the same way, you have these huge crowd scenes that are done in unison, in movement and choreography and responses, and it's really quite eerie. Stephanie, I think you would really like this one. And if you don't have Apple TV, well, then wait till December 17th when on Prime, when Fallout season 2 comes out. And you know, this is really quite good, again, by the guy who wrote a lot of the X-Files, directed some of the X-Files, did Breaking Bad, did Better Call Saul, and some of the actors from that appear in this show. But it is, I was hearing about the show from on another podcast I was on, and the guy said, there are 2 episodes out, and I watched the first episode late at night, and I could not watch the second episode. So he was up late. He said he complained about it. So I'm like, okay, I'm only going to watch 1 episode. And it was around 11 o'clock at night. And I watched 1 episode, and it's like, damn, I got to watch the second one now. So I was up till 1 o'clock watching Pluribus, which again is on Apple TV. And you could look at the trailer. The trailer does not do this justice in terms of the weirdness of the show. But yeah, that's my suggestion.
Thank
I
you.
gotta. I'm sorry. I gotta tag one more in, since Marty mentioned Apple TV. The morning show. I am absolutely hooked on the morning show.
Mhm. Well, they just had a deal with Peacock. Sorry, I don't want to advertise, but I can get them bundled because we get Peacock. It's really nice just to have The Office on endlessly and uninterrupted, and to have the super extended episodes, at least to give us a little new content. Um, it's just good background. But also they have some good stuff. And I think something we came along now, I don't know where it is. But I'm pretty sure it might be also on Peacock. Um, Came by it last week. It's a brand new show. It's one of the best or funniest um, oh my gosh, mockumentary type. So, in the spirit of The Office and Parks and Rec, that type of show. Um, it's called Stumble, and it's more in the world of those junior college cheerleaders. So if you had watched Cheer that was on Netflix, the documentary that ran a few seasons, but it's kind of like that's the world that they are living in, and it was funny. It One of the first things that made me laugh in a long time, and where I am looking forward to watching more, and I'm waiting for it. And the way you were talking about Pluribus, Marty, really sold me. And the morning show is actually one I've been trying to get into, but I was just waiting to have Apple TV again. But now it sounds like it's kind of essential.
Yeah, I think Apple TV has become probably one of the stronger networks for new material. And it's built its own library over a period of time. But I think it has also got a lot of incredible new shows that come out every season. So yeah, if you look at, am I going to spend $10 here or $10 here or $10 there? I'm watching most of the stuff on Apple TV, and Netflix is kind of an afterthought. I'm waiting for, or Prime is kind of an afterthought. I'm waiting for Fallout to happen again, and then I'll be watching it on that network. But yeah, there's consistently stuff on Apple TV like Slow Horses and all sorts of other great programming on there, and I think it's ignored for the what were the traditional broadcast uh, groups that then went streaming. Whereas Apple wasn't a traditional broadcast group, it just went streaming. So yeah, Elliot, you've got the next question.
Okie doke. Here we go. This is just a little context. A gentleman sent out a call for participants to for research on his dissertation through the listserv. Marty, you probably saw this, and it was about AI. And I was like, well, I don't know much about this. I should definitely take this survey and see what kind of questions he's asking. And I got finished with it, and I'll tell you in my answer. But it was very pivotal in the way I think about this. So here's my question: what do you think all the hoo ha is about AI? How much do you understand it? And what do you think the impact is?
You're asking the wrong. Well, you're not asking the wrong guy. You're asking the right guy.
Yes.
I have been on this since it started, and frankly, it was for a lot of people problematic, and we were entertained by bad examples of it because bad examples are more interesting for people to read than good examples. Since
Yeah.
then, it is now in pretty much every browser that we use, a lot of the software that we use, it is part of integrated into it. I really think it's a paradigm shift in the way in which we're using knowledge or accessing knowledge. And so that's what the hoo ha is. I think folks don't understand it at all. And for that reason, they don't know proper ways to use it. So Stephanie and I both did a presentation at ACES on AI and practical and appropriate ways to use it and when not to use it. But it keeps growing, and it is, if used correctly, it becomes a tool for your workflow. And in fact, yeah, I've got a podcast called AI Productivity Workflow that you can find at thepodtalk.net. And it becomes a tool for your workflow that changes the way in which you work completely. Um, and it's sort of like, what's all this hoo ha about typewriters? You know, why are people so much into these mechanical machines that type out sentences that you construct in your head and you use your fingers to get? We're sort of like that with AI. People who don't understand it see it as a frightening new technology, um, and it will force them to work differently. And that's probably the biggest. And it will force them to teach differently too when it comes to our field. That the complaints about students using it are justified, but the horses are already out of that barn. You need to figure out how to integrate it into what you're doing in the classroom or acknowledge it in ways that what you're doing in the classroom, or just keep putting up that big beautiful wall.
That big beautiful wall. Okay. It's funny because I think the stigma around AI is dissipating, and where maybe I don't even know, like 2 years ago, someone would be like, oh, "You use GPT totally. You totally use Chat GPT to write this letter to me or whatever," and they would be so offended. Also, if they can tell that easy, then you're not using it correctly, at least in my opinion. But nonetheless, I feel like now it's becoming easier for people just to be like, "Oh, that is easier," and they realize it's not just it's losing that stigma of just a quick, easy fix for people who don't want to think. And I think then now the hoo ha is emerging. Um, anyway, um, but AI is awesome. It can do many things. And it can help people become more efficient. But like Marty was saying, like with any tool, you need to learn how to use it and learn its capabilities, and just to also kind of realize it doesn't make you stop thinking. You just have to think in a different way to use it.
These are great answers. I was so glad. I really was excited about asking this question because I was like, I did this survey. I'm like, wow, I don't know shite about this. Yeah, I was like, what is that he's referring to? And I've noticed, like my colleague, Professor Stephanie Durkar, she and I played around with some entries in Chat GPT, and we noticed it will start confabulating like resources, confabulating. I've said it before, like an alcoholic uncle. And I was like, well, okay, it doesn't think originally, but it's very good at copying. It's a great mimic. It's a great mimic. Um, and then, I've been really immersed in Carl Jung's writings, and I think it's the German language, but Freud and Jung, they use a lot of double negatives. It's not unimportant to consider, and I'm like, oh, just say it's important to consider. But I think it's the German to English thing. But Chat GPT, no, it gives you paraphrases with the most clunky double negatives in it, and I think it's because it's not thinking about, well, different cultures, different languages. So yeah, my partner is really good at using, she says, Chat GPT, that's just for first drafts and ideas, and she walks me through how she does it. So I need to learn more about it, and I'm excited to, because just looking at, well, what it can and can't do, I want to learn more about it. So that's where I'm at, and I'm at the beginning of a long learning curve.
I'll give you some links and stuff. First of all, and this is an advice for you or advice for listeners, pay for it. You get much better outcomes if you pay for it.
You
And
mean
then
for
there are
the
some,
subscription to the
yeah,
AI?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You're going to get garbage. You're not going to be able to utilize all the functions of it and things like that. So when people talk about having problems with it, the first thing I ask them, are you paying for it? Nope. And I'm like, well, okay, let's start there. And then secondly, you can give it information. Like you can put in a German article written by Freud and it'll draw from that. It won't draw from the known universe. It can still do that, but it'll draw from the materials that you submit in it.
Can I ask you a
So,
quick question, Marty?
yeah, sure.
Once you submit that article by Freud, is that then part of all the materials in the greater universe?
It could be. There another thing that you can do with a paid subscription is you can shut off your uh, app or whatever you're using to access from. There's a switch to turn off use my material to create models. Now that's one level of making sure your stuff is not getting out there or is not being used per request. You don't
And
have that option.
my
Yeah,
partner Jen said that they call it a lake. They're going to create a lake with their internal data, but no one else can get in the lake unless you let them in.
that's one way of thinking of it. There are also on-device apps where you can download the model and the material only stays on device. So there's a lot to learn about it. I've been asked to do that survey, and it's flagged in my email. I need to get in there, but I'm glad you're looking more into it because I know these things feel mysterious to a lot of folks until they find out a little bit more about how they work. And I've seen people move to in a year say, "Oh, I'd never use that. You shouldn't use that. That's bad for you to use that." And then owning up, yeah, well, I used it to create some slides for
Well, and
a
I should
presentation I
add,
was going to. Yeah,
for several years, I have been wanting to learn how to animate on the computer because I have my imagination's exploding with ideas. And Jen, she was like, "Well, yeah, AI can do that. There are
yeah.
ways you can learn to do that." So yeah, yeah, it's like I'm much more excited than I was a year ago.
Yeah, I've always wanted to be able to code programs, but the thing that kept me from coding programs was the fact that I'd have to take a bunch of computer courses to learn how to code. And
Yeah.
I don't do that well. I mean, I mentioned earlier I do pretty good with math, so that's would be the thing that would interest me in doing it, the logic that's associated with it. I don't have to do that anymore. I can vibe code, is what they call it, by putting in my request for what I would like ChatGPT to create for me. Or there are other AI platforms that do that better than ChatGPT in terms of vibe coding. Okay, my question, last full question for the night is, what would you have changed about your own wedding ceremony? This comes from the fact that I went to a wedding this weekend, and I don't go to a lot of weddings. I don't get invited to a lot of weddings. Uh, but Aileen and I went to this wedding, and it was really nice. I mean, it was out of the weddings that I've been to, this was kind of nice. I could hear the person across the table talking to me. They gave us time to kind of just sit for a while. They didn't spend an enormous amount of time getting photos done where we had to sit around and, I think the people there were not big drinkers, anyways, which is fine. And I'm not. So, we weren't kind of forced into that bar reception sort of thing. And people stood up and talked about the bride and the groom. It was a smaller group of folks, and it was just really sweet. But it made me think back on my own wedding ceremony, and I'm curious if there were things you would have liked to have done differently.
So first, off the my first answer as it came to my head was like nothing, because honestly, truly, our wedding was it was great. It was great from start to finish. It was one of the best days, and I feel so glad and so privileged that I can say that. I think in part a lot of that was also my attitude, which was like, I am marrying this man that I love and I want to be with. So whatever happens, I don't care. As long as we get married today, it's all good. Now, having said all of that, when I really thought about it, there were two things. One, the rabbi didn't show up early to do the rehearsal, just the ceremony walkthrough as planned. So we were waiting around a while, and that did end up eating into our time to get pictures, because I did decide to get pictures before the ceremony and everything, just to be kind to guests. Marty, like you were pointing out, I didn't want people waiting around for us. So we were going to do the rehearsal ceremony with the rabbi there, and then take photos and then get on with the wedding. So he forgot and like didn't show up until a lot later, but then he showed up, so we did it. Whatever. Our photo time was crunched. The other piece, although it turned into a lovely evening, it was rainy and gray in the morning, or in during our picture time. And the only reason why that really mattered, besides uh, pictures, is because one of my hopes was to get our wedding photo and all of those family and bridal party pictures on the steps of the art museum with the fall foliage. Um, but that
Mhm.
didn't happen. But we have beautiful pictures, and we got outside later. I danced us out of the tent and outside, because it was actually getting a little hot in the party tent that was attached to this wonderful venue. We were married at Glidden House down at Wade Oval. So um, really was one of the best days. And if I knew both of you back then, or if I was getting married now, you'd both be invited. Okay.
And I'd have definitely come. Yeah, Stephanie, I'm going to echo a lot of what you said in terms of the general themes. Uh, Jen and I planned our wedding day we planned it together. She was definitely the detail person, as everyone who knows me knows. Yeah. Big picture, great. Details, wow. Keep this guy away from the cold water. He's just, yeah. But yeah, we really just wanted to do things straightforward, simple. A friend of mine, Tina Bergman, she played the hammer dulcimer, and she had a wonderful guitar player whose name's escaping me now. She usually performs with her husband Brian on the double bass. But she wanted the guitar for this gig, and we were fine. But now here's a backstory. This was at Hale Farm in Ohio, and I think it's a national park, but it's also got some party space you can rent out. And
Did you churn
my
butter?
duo, what's that?
I asked if you churned butter for the
Oh, I
wedding.
think they do that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can get a job there churning butter if you're younger in the summer. So, yeah, Hale Farm and something. I can't remember what, but Virginia will
And
probably
village.
give it to me. Anyway,
Hill Farm
so
and
we had
village.
it at this lovely place. And I discovered the place because my duo partner and I, Dale Galgozzi, we had a job this was interesting, right? It was a warm up band for the band at a wedding reception. And we were like, well, that's unique. Okay, fine. And so we went in and we did this. And the band was Crazy Marvin and the Blues Express. Oh my gosh, this guy was the most delightful human being. So we got to know Crazy Marvin, and he gave us a lot of tips about the music business. But he also started talking about how they don't charge a lot to rent this place out compared to other places. He had a really great business mind. He also had this one band member. She had a kind of a bicyclist glove, and she played the tambourine and she hit it on the gloved hand. And I said, Marvin, does that tambourine player sing as well? He says, oh no, that's my wife. She wants to keep an eye on me. He was awesome. But yeah, so I fell in love with Hale Farm through Crazy Marvin, and then we had our reception there. And I think the only thing I would change is I would have steered my recently acquired brother-in-law from doing shots with my mom. My best man had to take my brother-in-law home and tend to him over the night.
Oh, just
So
as far as
yeah,
drunk guests go, oh, sorry. I was just gonna, you reminded me too of one. I would have had one of my drunk friends not call our photographer an a-hole for no reason other than he was drunk. Then he got taken home.
I gotta tell you, I didn't have a lot of drunk people at my wedding because at the time I was working at a alcohol and drug treatment center. So the people that came were most naturally at that time, back in 1984, many of them were in recovery. And so that was kind of nice. We didn't have to deal with the alcohol. The other situation was the other people I invited were people I worked with at the radio station, and it was, you got 30 people at a radio station, and who do you not invite? Um, and I think one of my regrets would have been having invited as many people as I did that worked with me at the radio station because they kind of took up space, but they didn't take up a place in my life. And, my family's still around, and my wife's family, Aileen's family's still around. And that was what was important. And actually, we didn't invite them to the wedding ceremony. It was family only, which kind of made it special. My big regret from the wedding, and it had nothing to do with the ceremony, it had to do with the fact that I was spinning at what was essentially a gay bar back then. And the owner of the gay bar was a friend of Aileen's, had grown up with her. And, I had that gig. I was spinning on Tuesday nights, new wave night. And she knew someone who could do my hair. And I showed up after hours at the shop for him to do my hair, and he was all weeded up by then. And he put, the draped me, but I had an REM t shirt on, and he put all of the permanent solution in my hair, and it dripped down and it ruined like my favorite REM t shirt,
Oh
which was like the
no, that's
eye, the old
oh.
eye, black t-shirt with an eye symbol. And I have this, when it was done, when I finished and dried it out, it was had this white ring around the collar from the permanent. But what made that even worse was he thought the thing that I should look like at my wedding was a carrot. It was all bushy on top, really short on the side. He tinted some of the stuff on the top. And I came home and I was like, I hate this. I had this high hairstylist, and there, I have some pictures. I don't take my wedding pictures out much, but it was a mess. And I sat in the shower, leaning against the wall, just having it, trying to straighten this mess out, and kind of knowing I wouldn't have much success with it. Um, Here's the best part of the wedding. Aileen hated it too and never mentioned it to me through the whole wedding or even for years after we got married. So I was kind of able to relax about it and go through my wedding. So yeah, my haircut, my hairstyle, and inviting too many people because those folks won't be around in 42 years. So
That's a funny story. I have one
yeah,
tag on it. It wasn't
yeah.
something I regret. It just happened. My friends from Youngstown were at the wedding, and apparently at Hale Farm and something. They
And
leave.
village.
Oh,
She
Hale
knows it.
Farm and Village. Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, that was it. Hale Farm and Village. They leave the keys in all the vehicles they leave out on the grounds. I didn't understand this, and I think they bear a bit of responsibility for what happened. But my friends, of course, found the little SUV things and they found the keys and they went four wheeling and the Hale Farm and Village security, and we're not talking horse and buggy, folks. They were cars with sirens. They finally pull them down, and they're like, "What a blah," and they're like, so it comes back to me, I guess, as the groom, talk about patriarchal norms, and I'm like, look, man. I mean, I know it's something out of the ordinary, but they're from Youngstown,
Hmm.
and they don't get out a lot. And he was like, "Oh, all right. Well, you got him going home now?" I said, "Absolutely. Going home? Positively." Anyway, fun story.
All right. We have a final shot question. What is your morning drink? And by that, I don't mean alcoholic. Um, but I guess if it is, you can say it. It's up to you. But what do you drink at the start of the day, Elliot?
Oh, I hope my cardiologist is listening. Red Bull, straight Red Bull, none of those fake
Really?
sugars. Oh my God, I have to with long COVID. Even if I sleep till 10 in the morning, I feel like I'm underwater. I knock back as much caffeine as I can without exacerbating whatever's going on with my supraventricular tachycardia.
Ste- Stephanie, what is
Coffee.
your morning drink?
I drink coffee. But I drink it. I use the now. It's the donut shop cocoa mocha flavor coffee, and I just like that bit of flavor. And I just use some of sweet cream coffee creamer, um, and I also sprinkle in cinnamon and chili powder.
Cinnamon and chili powder.
Yeah, a little
Oh yeah.
spicy. It's so good.
But
It's awesome.
when you first started talking about it, it sounded like you were having a dessert with your coffee,
Yeah.
with the cream and the
Yes.
It's
sugar and the.
interesting though, when you said it, all the different taco mixes I'm working on, I never put in chili powder without cinnamon. They complement each other beautifully. Yeah.
So
Mine
good.
is Aileen gets up before me because the dog gets her up. Has the dog has no interest in getting me up. Sometimes I'll get up and get the dog down and let Aileen sleep in late, but she generally gets up before me, and she will make. We drink black Dunkin' Donuts coffee. That's it. No sugar, no
Mm.
cream, no nothing. And
Purist.
yeah, purists when it comes to that. And I gave up cream. My family was a big cream and sugar group. My sisters like that. And I gave it up on a whim because I thought I needed to remove that. It would help me with my diet. And it's just been so practical once you get used to drinking straight black coffee to just drink straight black coffee. So it's generally 2 8-ounce glasses of Dunkin' Donuts regular old coffee. And we sit and go through the news and ignore each other with our iPhones a little bit, but get the day started that way. So that's my morning
Hey,
wake up. But Red
is
Bull
that
is
going to
a,
be called Dunkin' Coffee now?
yeah, it's Dunkin'. Yeah, it's Dunkin' coffee. So Red Bull is a surprise for me from you, Elliot, that you were
Really?
You do Red Bull in the morning.
Oh my gosh. I've been on it for 20 years. I used to drink 7 a day.
Yeah.
No
You
I
know,
wonder you
used
whatever
have
to,
wings.
worked.
yeah. The only time I
Everyone's
drink it
like,
is,
"Why do you have to go to a cardiologist?" I don't know. I can't imagine what's wrong with my heart.
yeah.
My
I
heart's like,
drank
"Oh,
it.
this bitch."
I drank it on long trips, basically, when I was driving to give me a little more kick. And I would always drink the no sugar or zero sugar version. Yeah, well, diabetic kind of
No, I
helps.
mean you do what you got to do, but it just is. I look. I've had it before too. That's how I know.
Oh, but that 0 sugar, that goes through me like a bullet train. Oh boy.
Yeah, well, my brother-in-law kind of said, you have you have AFib. Maybe you shouldn't be drinking Red Bull. That's probably not good because it'll elevate your heart rate too. So, whatever. Enough about that.
Okay.
Let's thank these folks for being here. Thanks to our firing squad, Stephanie and Elliott. And look for some of these characters on their podcasts on thepodtalk.net. Our website is thepodtalk.net. Our email is thepodtalknetwork@gmail.com. We have other shows at thepodtalk.net, including things like the Tech Savvy Professor with Eric, who's on this show with us on Sunday nights when he can make it. And I've got the Gear Up and Go with my son, where we talk about travel tech. And I got the Old Mac Gang that we do with folks over 65 using computers, and AI productivity workflow about AI and its use at work, and a show that Stephanie's going to be on this week called Fade to Chat.
Oh,
Movies from
yeah.
the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And we're going to be doing Duck Soup and going through the movie and some of the trivia and some of the fun parts of it for us. So you can look for that on the podtalk.net. Our theme music is from Menage a Quad, Real Swing Chet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad.